The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.
Mike, we're back with another episode of The Unlikely Innovators, and it's a very Sudbury-centric podcast episode. We have Greater Sudbury Mayor Paul Lefebvre on the pod.
It was the first mayoral podcast, and we were at Mayor Lefebvre's office today, which is great. Always enjoy doing an in-person episode, but I think certainly being in the mayor's office for that and being able to talk to him about his passion for Sudbury, and what it's been like for him in the first 5 months in this new position was great. But I think before I ask you more about the episode and what you took away from that, I do want to read Mayor Lefebvre's bio. Obviously, I think for many of our listeners from the community, he's a man who needs no introduction because we're very familiar with him representing the community at the federal level, but he does require a bio because we wouldn't be good podcast hosts if we didn't do that. So before we go any further, Paul Lefebvre was elected mayor of Greater Sudbury on October 24th, 2022, and assumed office on November 15th, 2022. So he's been in that role now for just a little over 5 months at the time of our recording. He also serves as a board member of the Greater Sudbury Development Corporation, the Greater Sudbury Police Services Board. Mayor Lefebvre was twice elected member of parliament for the riding of Sudbury, serving from 2015 to 2021. During his time with the federal government, he sat on the Public Accounts and Official Languages Committee before being appointed parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. He was an engaged and dedicated contributor to the Canadian Minerals and Metals Plan. And in June 2019, he represented Canada at the Energy Environmental G20 Summit in Japan. I'll stop there. There's more that I could do, but I think in the interest of saving some of these nuggets for the conversation that we had with Mayor Lefebvre, I won't go any further. But Steve, it's not often that we would get to interview a mayor for our podcast. What was your takeaway, from some of the conversation that we had today?
Well, I think if you're a Sudburian listening to the podcast, indeed, if you're even an Ontarian or Canadian, you got to be optimistic about the future. Just the sort of ideas that we talked about and where we think the city's going to go in lieu of the sort of critical minerals and battery metals revolution that we're in the midst of. I think, it's a time for optimism, but really, optimism with some, with a degree of urgency. We have to jump on this opportunity. I think the mayor is starting to position our community to take full advantage of that.
Yeah, no, I think optimism is a great word to look at it. I think obviously, for those of us who've been, living and working for a long time, I think we've always felt that optimism, but I think right now there is a palpable sense that this is a really unique opportunity. We can really seize it. And I think, we are optimistic about that and what the future holds. So
what if we did this, Mike? Does Sudbury have a buzz? I think there's a buzz around Sudbury, and if we talk about it, it'll happen. There's a buzz.
I think it's there. Let's just keep it going. So on that note, there is a buzz, but let's go to this podcast with Mayor Paul Lefebvre. So we're now back, and we're very pleased to be joined. We're joining him because we're in the mayor's office, but we're with Mayor Paul Lefebvre. Welcome to the Unlikely Innovators.
Happy to be here. It's awesome. Thank you for having me.
So typically when we start our episodes, we always ask the guests about their journey. We try to uncover whether it was unlikely or not. And, on the surface, being a lawyer and becoming a politician, it's not necessarily the most unlikely journey because we know that it's often a field that a lot of politicians graduate from, but maybe it is unlikely. So maybe can you talk about your journey? Did you see yourself always getting into office, or did you foresee a long legal career and this just kind of happened?
I think the latter. I think I really thought I had a long career, and I think when we moved back to Northern Ontario and when we moved back to Sudbury, certainly participating in a lot of boards, and I sat on many boards, just giving back to the community, right, getting involved. And then people start to say, well, maybe you'd be interested in another career in politics. I was like, okay, well, I never really thought about that. And they kind of asked me to run, the Liberals Association here asked me to run in 2011. I said, no, the kids were too young. And I think then in 2014, as we were looking at 2015, and saying, well, there was a bit more interest there. But yeah, I know a lot of my colleagues that I met with in Ottawa. There was a lot of lawyers, and for them that was a passion. They always thought they'd be going through that route. I'm from a small town of Kapuskasing. Dad was a welder. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she worked. She finished her high school after I went to elementary school. And so we were a foster home. We had 18 foster kids in our house over 5 years. We had a little 900 square foot house. So maybe giving back and getting involved in the community was always in my blood. But the politics nobody in my family ever ran for politics, and and certainly the political jokes were always at the table as well. So I grew up in that environment.
Yeah, so I mean, in many ways, this has been unlikely for you from your perspective. What isn't what is unlikely, however, is if a lawyer then also starts a media company, and I think that's a less traveled path for many in the law profession. Can you talk about Lefebvre Communications and sort of what made you want to get into radio before the?
It's a really good question. Certainly, I'm a musician as well. My first degree when I went to university was in music. I did 3 years. I'm actually missing one course, so I don't say I have my undergrad. I'm missing one class, not because I failed. I don't know what happened. It was I must have dropped it along the way, but and then I got into law school. So a passion for music. I've been playing music since I was a kid, and certainly being in Ottawa. Then we came up north. The radio station here has a long history. One of the first francophone stations outside of Quebec. And I just didn't think it was involved in the community the way that it could be and the way that it should. So I have a station in Timmins and a station here in Sudbury. And then we opened one up in Surgeon Falls. And there's more expansion from the team right now. As you're in politics, the kind of team runs it. Mm-hmm. Very, very little engagement other than talking to the bookkeeper, making sure that the bills are paid, right? And the budgets are followed. But so that's how that all came to be. And the little story is that I was driving with my wife. We were listening to the radio station saying, well, the next 3 songs are just as bad as the other songs. Can I call the owner and see if they'd be willing to sell? And we listened to the 3 songs, and we didn't know any of them, and we follow a lot of French music. Saying, well, maybe. So she said, yes, I guess you can call him. And then I gave him a call, and he flew down from Toronto and said, well, let's make a deal. And that's how that happened.
Wow. I mean, and you wouldn't believe how many, Mike, I looked at you when he said he's a musician. We have so many innovative people on the podcast, and there's always this link back to music inclination. It's right. Incredible how those two things are linked. But I mean, everyone from, Chris Hadfield to engineers and, everything in between. It seems there's a musical inclination. Mike is actually a very famous musician. He does. Oh, wow. He's the king of doing the first 4 bars of any acoustic guitar song.
Perfect. Yes.
Just intros.
Just the intros.
Intros only.
Well, what's your musical instrument of choice?
Saxophone.
Okay.
So I did saxophone performance. I did it for 3 years, and I also did piano. I got my grade 8 piano.
Okay.
From the conservatory. I played in a bunch of bands locally, and played in a band with Pandora Top, and it was more of a funk rock band. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter's doing piano right now. My wife sent me a video on the weekend. She can play Happy Birthday and sing it at the same time. I can't play and sing at the same time with guitar, so she already has me beat.
There you go.
She's only 6 years old.
6 years old.
We knew that was going to happen. It was only a matter of time.
It's because intros don't often have words, right?
That is true. I got to find a song that starts off with lyrics right away. But we're obviously in the mayor's office. We want to talk a little about politics. Sure. We know you, and we've traveled paths together when you were at the federal level representing Sudbury. And it's a bit of a different animal, I would think. Again, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously at the federal level, you're still representing your constituents, but often from afar. Whereas municipally, you're here, you're in the mix. People know you, see you at the grocery store and things like that. Can you maybe talk about what it's been like in these first 5 months, going from politics at a federal level to being back here at the municipal level as a mayor? Yeah, no, it's certainly at the federal level and provincial level, you're on a team, right? You're on a team, and you got to stick with the team, and kind of the leader drives that path, right? And you guys certainly establishes kind of the narratives, and you kind of got to follow that, even though you have what you want to do for your riding in your community. But at the municipal level, you're in charge, right? And there's a lot more powers than I think that I thought there was. Basically, with the team, right? And but if you want to bring a motion, right? If you have council on side, and that's the rule here, is making sure that you have a really good relationship with your council, that they trust you and that you trust them, and so for me, it's very different at the same time, because your 12 councillors that we have here in Sudbury, they're all independent, right? They're not part of a team. There's no discipline if they don't follow what I want to do, right? They were all elected individually. So I got to respect the governance model that we have, but I'm enjoying it. Right, I see what the changes you can bring, certainly on the governance structure that we have here in the city, as well as when you imagine the future, and as we advocate for certain of the special projects or certain things that are near and dear to me, it's up to me.
right? And so to me, to tap into the talent that we have here at the city to work with me and to move those things forward. And there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And what I always try to think is, when we're in Ottawa, there's always opposition. Whatever decision you make, doesn't matter if you think it's the best decision ever. You'll get up in the House of Commons, you'll be lambasted. That's the worst decision ever, right? Over here, that doesn't happen. But that being said, the reality is that you are on the ground, right? So when there is a snowstorm and the snowplows are not getting out, or if there are potholes, right? And if there is certainly infrastructure that is not working properly at Sudbury, when I was at a Wolves game and I was trying to wash my hands after going to the washroom and the one sink wasn't working, right? And then certainly I got a tap in the back and say, well, why isn't that thing working?
Yeah.
So that's how close to the ground.
You're the one getting the wrench out.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, just give you a second here. My toolbox is right here, right?
Yeah.
But there is that the people expect, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, but I don't mind that. I've been, again, having been in politics long enough now, almost 8 years now. You expect those things. You're able to shrug those off as to, well, and sometimes they're serious and sometimes it's kind of a joke. But it's but for me there's a very, very big difference. Certainly at the mayor level from what I was doing as an MP.
Yeah, and I'll help you with the pothole issue for 1 second.
Okay.
We had a speaker at our event last night at the college, and he's from Pennsylvania, and he was giving some remarks before a student innovation challenge we had last night, and he actually complimented us on how good our roadways are.
Perfect.
So I don't know if that means the roadways in Pennsylvania are that much worse, or we're doing a good job, but I thought it was something that made me feel better about living in
I
Sudbury,
appreciate
for sure.
you mentioning this on the podcast. I really do.
And I want to stay with Sudbury. I mean, we love Sudbury so much. We know it inside out. And Mike and I and yourself, we know how innovative the community is. But I think for a lot of people, maybe even people that live here, Sudbury is often viewed as an unlikely destination for innovation. The mining has not always been seen as the most innovative place historically.
Yep.
But what is it that you see in the community that makes it an ideal place for innovation in business? Because that's how we feel about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the history of our city, right? Where we were certainly, as really, when we look at the land, the air, and the water that we had here was all polluted, and look, because of innovators, right? People come in and certainly cleaning up the water, right, with some innovation, cleaning up the air, and working as a community with the post-secondary institutions, with the mining companies to say, hey, we can do better, and here's a process. But that was all created here, right? And as well as when we look at just the landscape, right? When we talk about the trees, so that innovation has happened here, and then at the same time, right, when you look at on the equipment side going into mining, those were all invented here, right? Those are all manufactured here. They're all created here because they went to the mine site saying, well, we have a problem. We need a piece of equipment that will do this. And they would go back and they figure it out, right? And then they create it, and they would go down in the shaft and they bring it there and they would operate it. So that a lot of the innovation that is happening in the mining world is happening here in Sudbury because of its people. And so we talk about innovation, and there's always that difference between innovation and invention. But we also have a lot of inventors that have created stuff, right? But because we needed innovation to happen. So I think actually Sudbury is one of the most innovative places in the world. Certainly when it comes to mining, but then from there, we just look at a lot of the equipment, and as we're electrifying our world, a lot of that is happening here as well, right? Because we needed to go deeper underground. Therefore, we needed to innovate. Therefore, we needed equipment that didn't have diesel engines, right? We converted them all, or we're now converting a lot of them to battery electric, right? To go down and deeper. Well, that has to happen here because there's a business component to it, right? And so, de-risking it is happening here. So I just find that Sudbury is one of the most innovative places from the environmental side to the business side.
Yeah,
and that's who we are.
Here.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the big reasons why we started the podcast and why we called it the Unlikely Innovators, was because of that idea that I think for those that are here in the community, we know how innovative it is, but to the outsider, it's a little bit unlikely, but we know that it's not. And I mean, on that note, it's no secret that this is a college podcast, so I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the colleges. We obviously know that, here in our community, Cambrian, Boreal, and Laurentian have been a big part of Sudbury's history. And then in terms of like moving forward and the growth that we hope to have in the city, where do you see the role of the post-secondaries playing in that, not only historically as to what they've been doing, but moving forward to really help drive innovation and growth in the city of Sudbury?
Well, they play a very, very important role because bringing in that talent here, training that talent, and we need them to stay. Right now in the City of Greater Sudbury, there's around 3,500 jobs that are empty. that means we need to fill them up, right? We need people. Where is that talent going to come from? Well, either from the city itself or people coming in here. It's one thing to try to attract them here, but certainly if they come here to study first, we train them here and they get acquainted with the city and to appreciate what we do, and then making sure through the colleges and the university we give them those opportunities for those jobs, then they'll stay here. So the growth will be, a lot of that growth will be driven through our colleges and our university. So, and again, we've done it before. Yeah. Right, that's who we are, but I think we need to do it now at a scale that we've never seen before. Yeah, because the demand is there, and it won't stop. And as we're going on the cusp of that world changing in front of us, I was talking to a gentleman today about the mining equipment that needs to be battery powered over the next 5 years. He figures there'll be at least 5,000 to 7,000 pieces of equipment that will need to be battery powered for just to service Northern Ontario and Northwestern Quebec. That is, so where is that going to be serviced? Well, where to be manufactured, serviced, and at the end of the life of those batteries, will it be recycled? Will all happen here. And I want, as mayor, certainly I'm advocating to make sure that all of that supply chain, that the economic chain happens here. But again, I know you at Cambrian, you guys are at the forefront of that. You're already seeing that, right? Because that world is changing on a daily basis. And we're trying to anticipate what it's going to be, but so that's why we're so fortunate as a mining jurisdiction, but to have these great post-secondary institutions. There's no other cities like us around the world that has 9 operating mines, 2 new ones coming on board, with 2 colleges and a university in that space. Yeah. So again, I just feel very strongly that we're already doing a good job, and we're going to be forced to. Well, naturally, we're going to do more, and the post-secondary is very, very important for that.
Well, Steve had a class from R.L. Beatty in today, so we're trying to keep them in here, get them acclimated to mining and tech early, so they stay.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was interesting. So we had this robotics team from R.L. Beatty, they're grade 5 and 6 students, and they came by, and one of the things that they had to build Lego robotics, but the second half of the challenge that they had to do as part of the team was actually deal with a societal problem. And they chose a mining problem, and it was just so awesome because, they could have chosen anything in the world. Yeah. Now you look at their parents, they're all, in the mining industry. So maybe there was some influence, but if we can get half of those students interested 100%. In a career in mining, I think it's job done for us, right? So really important. And I mean, that figure, 5,000 pieces of equipment, that's staggering. Those pieces of equipment are double the cost of what you'd see a diesel piece of equipment. So the economic opportunity is going to be incredible. And that's sort of why we're here, right?
But it's also for at that class and those young folks to say, well, that world is changing. It's just not, it's not that dirty world anymore. It's digital, right? It's basically it's robotics, right? It's another world it's another skill set. But we need more skill set than ever, right? From underground, right, to the surface, to basically building that equipment. So I'm with you that we need as much talent as we can, certainly. So from who's here, and how do we bring any students from international students that want to come here or across Canada for that matter, to really give them that opportunity and have these great paying jobs and that lifestyle that we get to offer here in Sudbury.
Yeah, could you imagine quitting time and then you're 5 minutes from a lake? I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's what I do.
That's what we're selling, right?
That's who I am, right? That's what I do.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes without saying, of course, that we're blessed with, immense mineral wealth and obviously the initial processing capacity we have in the smelters. And it's unparalleled in the mining community. Usually these mining camps like ours don't last hundreds of years, and this sort of talent doesn't develop over that time. So we're really blessed. But how do we make this generational opportunity? It's being called with critical minerals. How do we, if at the end of it we only have more holes dug in the ground, that's a win in some ways. But mining intensity doesn't mean sustainable economic growth. Could you 100%. Comment on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. That's why. But before we could we accepted that, right? We would explore in the basin, we would extract, we would process, and it would be shipped out because we would make stainless steel with certainly on the nickel side, because there was not a stainless steel plant in Sudbury, not in Canada, right? It was around the world. So we accepted that. Now the world, as you said, has completely changed, and we can actually do a lot more on the supply chain closer to the site. And so basically now we're asking, why Sudbury? Why should that be having in Sudbury? And one, as you have the mineral wealth, but as you said, how do we make sure that, because that could be shipped around the world. But for me, that's why now we're looking at that supply chain, right? And one of the things certainly I'm starting to talk about, and I'll be talking about some more, and we're happy to kind of talk about that here, is one of the piece that we need is certainly a nickel sulfate refinery. Right, and that's one of the pieces basically that will take the nickel and to transfer it into the product that needs to go into the batteries itself, and then talk about precasts and and all the anodes and the cathodes and all that stuff that can be done here, as well as and on the recycling side. So I think there's the raw materials, right, the cathode anodes and the recycling. Those are all things that we should be doing here. But a lot of that is new, right? It's just not like as I'm asking around, trying to find more information as to what are other jurisdictions doing, right?
Yeah.
What's going on in the world? Like why there? Why not here? What do we need to make it happen here? So that as mayor, I have limited powers to do that, right? I'm not the one who be brokering or enticing businesses and giving them these huge sums of money that come here. We don't have that ability. But what I am doing is trying to raise a flag and saying, if you want a processing facility for this, we have the culture, we have the history, and we have the talent to do it, and we have the land to do it all here. So that's what certainly in the 5 months that I've been here in my job, I'm kind of noticing that we need certainly the leadership to say that loud and clear. These are pieces that we can do here, and certainly happy to start mentioning that on any platform that I can.
Yeah, well, we're all singing from the same song sheet, so to speak.
Yeah, because it's, Steve's been talking, and I mean, many people are talking about it as the generational opportunity, but I think after, and you were at this event when Dr. Dan Breznic was in town, that, again, this is almost kind of like a generational reset where we have all the capacity here, but rather than just shipping things out raw, like we have an opportunity now to make use of all the infrastructure and skill sets that we have here for the last 100-something years and really kind of reinvent the way that we approach this industry. Because right now, if we keep doing the same thing, it's not going to, I think, have the same benefit that it's had in the past, right?
100%. And I think also the other thing that we have in Sudbury is that certainly our ESG, right? Environmental, social, and our governance, basically, that's who we are. Again, they're talking about where we came from as reclaiming our water, our land, and the air. Right, a lot of the companies internationally are looking at their carbon footprint, right, as they're going to be manufacturing these batteries and these cars and that equipment. So we got to make sure that we sell that value proposition, and ensure that we can even do more of that value proposition. Again, we have probably the greenest nickel in the world already being extracted here and processed here. We got to keep on that path and even lowering our carbon footprint to have that, because it's a race. There's no doubt that this is a race. A lot of that infrastructure, of that value added, is being decided right now, right? They're looking at what are the possibilities, where we're going to set up. So that's why I'm having those conversations with the OEMs. I'm having those conversations as much as I can. So for me, it's making sure that we get the message out. That's my role. And then hopefully, with the business sector, try to drum that up and sort of put our best foot forward. And I really believe in that potential. And I really feel that there's good opportunities there.
Well, you definitely have partners in us to try and amplify that message, because we feel the same way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We always like to keep the podcast evergreen, but this will come out the day before the State of the City address. So, obviously, we're not going to have any spoilers now.
Breaking
we want people
news.
to tune in. But if you could give us a taste of what you'd be keying into at a high level, so that everybody still tunes in for that.
Yeah, well, certainly we talk about the nickel sulfate plant, refinery is a big piece, right? To say that as mayor, I'm open to certainly entertain this and advocate for it. And at the same time, certainly a lot of this speech will be about, we have the talent, we got to keep the talent here, we got to attract the talent here. We have the land, right? What do we do with our land strategy here? How do we attract businesses that want to set up here? And certainly, again, try to make sure that on the technology side that people want to come here as well and to set up here. And what does that look like? So land strategy, bringing in that technology and talent recruitment and maintaining that here. So there'll be a lot of that. So more of certainly an economic development piece, right? And kind of doing, my plan is to kind of do a SWOT analysis, right? Our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats in the business world that is there. At the same time, how do we make this continue to make this an attractive community where we want to live, work, and play, right? That's key, right? It's great because right now, as I talked about, there's thousands of jobs available in Sudbury, and that's around the world, right? People can pick where they want to go and work. So why Sudbury, right? For me, I love the outdoors. We go fishing and hunting, and we snowmobile, we cross-country ski, and in the summer we bike and we kayak and we canoe. We do that within an hour of here, right? All of that is right here. I leave my home with my slow machine, and I get out and we put our cross-country skis, and we actually walk across, and we have trails. So there's just so many things, great lifestyle here that is there that people don't realize, unless you like to be in your car in the GTA and drive for an hour every day, just one way and drive an hour back. Unless you enjoy that, keep doing it. But if you want to be 10, 15, 20 minutes from a lake and work and get to a lake and get to a camp in 45 minutes, this is the place to be.
Well, you could spend an hour in a car if you were waiting at the Paris Street Bridge. But I'm kidding. Trying to get.
I think it was 2 minutes. I think it was 2 minutes for that.
There you go. Now the podcast is over.
So and you've been very generous with your time. You're obviously
awesome.
a very busy mayor, and you're a very active mayor in the community.
Yeah.
One of the things we like to end on is a bit of a fun, you didn't know this about our guest sort of thing. And so what does Mayor Paul Lefebvre do in his spare time that we don't know about? What's one of your hobbies that we might not? We know you're a musician from earlier, but
from earlier. Well, I talked about snowmobiling and ice fishing.
Yeah.
And people don't really see me as a hunter as well, right? I have a camp on the island, like a lot of us do, right? That's our backyard on the General Island, so I go deer hunting there. And I grew up in that world, right? So a lot of that. What else? I downhill ski. People don't see me as an athlete in that function, as well as a lot of sports. On the one side, there's a lot of arts in my life, but on the sporting side, so I don't play hockey anymore. But I used to actually this year I coached my son, right? And he was playing for Nickel Center and Garrison, so I coached him. So people are always surprised to see me in that world, right? Because they sometimes see me as a former politician, or now certainly a former MP, mayor, lawyer, right? And some people know me from the arts because I was one of the founders of the jazz festivals. So they see me in that lens, but they don't realize the whole athletic, my passion for the outdoors and for sports as well. So there's a lot of time spent with my kids when I can doing that stuff.
That's great.
Well, we did know about your passion for hockey, so I'd be remiss again if I didn't bring up hockey. I am wearing a Maple Leafs tie. We're recording this podcast on the Leafs will play their first game, so I don't want to.
They're
date
in the
this,
playoffs right now.
We're just going to assume that they're doing well in the series because they come out a week later. But one of the questions I have for you, and I know that you're not a Leafs fan, I know that you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, so that's fine. We can split the differences. But one question I have for you is obviously I wouldn't expect you to cheer for the Leafs right now. But would you cheer for the Bruins, knowing that there's a potential that the Bruins could bring the Stanley Cup back to Sudbury when we've got Nick Foligno and Tyler Bertuzzi with connections?
That's a tough one.
That's
all your questions. That is the hardest question you're asking. Oh, I have had you ask for Bruins. Yeah. You know what? If some Sudbury boys would bring the Stanley Cup, I'd be thrilled. Right, period. I don't care what jerseys that they're wearing, and so for me. But from the Leafs, I listen. That's probably the team that I'm cheering for right now. Right, my brother's a huge Leafs fan. My brother-in-law's, my best friends are all Leafs fans, and actually, I've always been a fan of Mitch Marner since he was in the OHL, and so I've got I'm cheering for the Leafs. But if the Bruins win it, we can bring the Stanley Cup to Sudbury. I'll be there and I'll take a picture with the guys. I'll be thrilled.
I was going to say, obviously I want the Leafs to do it, but it would be the biggest day in the history of the Beef and Bird. Huge moment for the Topazzini family. So I'm sure for it. If it has to happen, I'm down.
I'll be there that day for sure.
That's great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining us on the Unlikely Innovators.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So we're back, Steve. I almost thought we were going to hit the brakes on the episode when you made the comment about the Paris Street Bridge. But you know what? Mayor Lefebvre, he could take
it in stride.
He can give it and he could take it. So he took it in stride and we continued on. I think he also appreciated the Bruins reference that I threw in there. Again, I would never assume that a Habs fan would cheer for the Bruins, nor would I. But again, I think as somebody, and we talked about this the other day, that back in the day, going to the Beef and Bird on Fridays was must-see TV for us in our youthful days, where that was the one-stop shop where you were going on a Friday night. And so if the Bruins won the Stanley Cup and they brought it back to the Beef and Bird,
let me ask you that: would you go? I mean, you're such a here's the thing. Here's the thing. So you are a dyed-in-the-wool Toronto Maple Leafs fan, but you're also a general hockey fan and a Sudbury hockey fan. So I would conjecture that you would definitely attend.
100%.
If invited.
I will go. I'll just crash it.
Yes,
all those things. But then, I'm a Porchetta fan.
Yeah,
I'm
a Beef and Bird fan.
I'm a Beef and Bird fan, as we already know.
Yeah.
So I think definitely I would go if I were invited. But no, I think beyond that, that's a long ways out. So I think we'll just kind of focus on the here and now. And again, as we're talking about this episode, it's the first round of the playoffs. So there's a lot of things can change by the time you're listening to this episode. But what I think won't change was I think a lot of the goods nuggets that Mayor Lefebvre dropped throughout the conversation today. I think even just, from I think looking how the city can best position itself to seize that critical minerals opportunity, to talking about the role that the post-secondaries will play, not only in that role, in that opportunity, but I think just beyond when it comes to the growth of the city. Obviously, the post-secondaries have been, part of the backbone of the community for over 50 years. But I think certainly as we look to kind of continue to take those next steps and grow and develop further, there's an even bigger role to play when it comes to, training that talent pipeline, getting people to come here, getting people to stay here. So I think we'll end on that, because certainly we don't need to end every podcast with hockey, although I'd love to. But
well, let me save you. No matter what the development of the city, there will still be some that say that we're not a grown-up city until we have an IKEA. I don't feel that way, but
who says that?
I've heard people say that.
I don't know about that. I don't
No,
think that's true.
I haven't heard anyone say that. Anyway, thanks.
Well, that's something for Mayor Lefebvre. Why don't we have an IKEA here, right?
Yeah, well, what the heck? I want to buy my cheap furniture I have to put together. Anyway, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Unlikely Innovators, and we'll see you next time.
The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.